What is important, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, is how to reposition the Nigerian nation. Because the trajectory of global growth is facing Africa, and Nigeria will make or mar that transition. And how do we go about it? The respect that the black man gains in the world is directly proportional to the performance of the Nigerian nation. If Nigeria fails, the black man has failed. And the global economy, sadly, is careering towards a recession. The Bank of England had predicted that the British economy is going to go through a very long, deep recession. In the upcoming winter, our former colonial masters are backsliding to the status of a third world nation because 70% of UK citizens will have a choice between heating or eating. That's how bad it is. I'm an eternal optimist, but I'm also a realist. We cannot shield ourselves from the global realities, from the challenges in Ukraine. We are going to go through some very rough waters in the coming months and years. This is why leadership is very crucial. 2023 will be a watershed election in the history of this country. As I've always said, we are not preparing for the Olympics, but an institution that thrives on the superiority of ideas and track records. And who has better track records and superiority of ideas than Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu? We just spoke about the Lagos deep sea port that is going to handle, is the largest in Nigeria and one of the largest deep sea ports in West Africa. And it's going to handle about 2.4 million tonnage per annum. 30 years ago, you will see Babala was sacrificing black cows along the shores of the Atlantic at the Bar Beach because of the quality of somebody's ideas. Here we have the Eco-Atlantic City that will give accommodation facilities to 250,000 Nigerians and 150 that will stream in to work there. I spent a night in that edifice and it was amazing. I said, look, I'm in the middle of the ocean. Where are the marmites and the to come and torment us? So when I was to speak in Mina about 3 days ago, I was curious, what have they accomplished in Lagos in the agricultural scene? Because Lagos with 3,577 square kilometers is the smallest state in Nigeria. Borno with 70,868 square kilometers, you can put 21 of Lagos into Borno. I was curious, and lo and behold, the largest rice mill in Africa and the third largest in the world is located in Lagos at Imota on a sprawling 37 hectares of land, with the rice mill alone occupying 8.75 hectares that will provide direct jobs to 1,500 Nigerians and indirect jobs to 254,000 Nigerians. That will produce 2.8 million bags of 50 kg rice per annum. It's the product of somebody's imagination. Talk about the Aliko Dangote refinery. It's the largest single train refinery in the world that has the capacity to refine 650,000 liters 650,000 barrels of oil per day. It's a $25 billion investment. As rightly encapsulated by Hadiza, we have a coastline of 850 kilometers. He has the option of siting it in Ondo, or Kitipupa has even oil. He had the option of siting it in Ogun. But because of the ambience, because of the enabling environment created by Bola Tinubu and his team, that edifice is in Lekki, in Lagos. And when he became the governor, Lagos was generating a paltry 600 million at the IGR. Now Lagos is generating per month 61 billion naira. And Lagos is the fifth largest economy in Africa and is projected to be the third largest economy by the end of the decade. When I first got a job in Lagos in 1993, I had to beg my mother for over 2 weeks before she allowed me to go. By then, the peer of Lagos, on average, knows that I was the beginning of wisdom. Before she allowed me to go, they had to assemble a crowd of marabouts to pray for me. Not for me to progress in Lagos, but for my safety, for me to come back in one piece to Maiduguri. That was how bad things were. And I want you to compare the situation in Lagos 30 years ago and what it is now. Now Lagos is the safest city-state in West Africa, where people are coming from all over the world for holidaying in Lagos. This is why leadership is very, very crucial for the growth. For the sake of the black man, what are the options available? You know, our political space is filled with a lot of very careful snails who do not want to disturb the apple cart, who do not want to ruffle feathers. We have to send jibes. We have to provoke conversation without descending so low as to engage in malicious concoctions or dubious aspersions on personalities. But what are the options available? I don't want to mention the Wole Wole incident. I respect Waziri Pombina. He's an elder statesman that I hold in the highest esteem. I will not question his nationality, no. He's a bona fide Nigerian. Peter Gringori Obi, I call him Gringori. Gringori is my friend, but Gringori has absolutely nothing to offer apart from dubious statistics. So the choice before us, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, is like the difference between daylight and darkness. And at the risk of sounding immodest, when the elder statesman Otumba Benga Daniel mentioned that there are 8,000 tractors in Nigeria, I'm a humble man. I don't like to blow my own trumpet. But you know, as captured in Chinua Achebe's things fall apart, you have to learn how to blow your own trumpet. Half of the agricultural equipment in Nigeria are in Borno. There are less than 50 combined harvesters in the whole of the Nigerian Federation.
To achieve double-digit economic growth by boosting our GDP to over 533 billion naira, which will make us the largest economy in Africa. And this he wants to do by the end of 2023. The World Bank has projected 3% growth for Nigeria. Asiwaju is projecting 10% growth. You will be asking yourself, can he achieve this? The proof of this is contained in this 80-page manifesto. He wants to turn Nigeria into an industrial powerhouse with a level of industrial activity unprecedented in our nation's history. We are presently a nation that imports finished products and raw materials. Asiwaju plans to change these dynamics. I was a young banker in the 80s. I was a head of corporate finance. I was assigned the responsibility to finance manufacturers. And I knew at that time the area of manufacturing companies we had in Nigeria. I remember the likes of Michelin and Dunlop, the textile companies like Aswani, Chemtex, and the rest of them, Kaduna Textiles. They are scattered all over the country. They've all left our shores. Asiwaju's dream is to bring them back to Nigeria and many other international brands. He has identified over 130 million young Nigerians who have creative energies and abundant talents. He plans to empower many of them and make them successful entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs like Otumba Gbenga Daniel, who started as a 30-something-year-old young engineer, and he has been there, is still there as I speak. And we know there are so many Nigerians, bundle of talents, who are inhibited by institutional constraints as it were today. And Asiwaju's goal is to remove those institutional constraints and unleash the powers within them so that Nigeria's economy can grow as fast as possible. Those are the ways he intends to achieve the double-digit growth. He appreciates the crucial role agriculture plays in our economy. It's the largest part of our GDP. And he actually wants to usher in genuine and complete rebirth of the agricultural sector. He's bringing back the old commodity board. My dad worked at the Western Nigeria Marketing Board, which was the cocoa board of old. And I remember that the moment the Western Nigeria Marketing Board collapsed, the cocoa agricultural sector also collapsed. We have been unable to recover. Asiwaju wants to bring back these commodity boards. The reason being that commodity boards stabilize prices for farmers. It gives them confidence to go and produce, knowing fully well that somebody is going to buy their produce at a price that will not make them poorer. As it were today, farmers are at the mercy of buyers who are foreign, powerful buyers, and they dictate the prices. And so prices of cocoa has been crashing. Prices of cotton and major agricultural exports have been crashing because they've lost control. Commodity boards will bring this back. We stabilize prices, we ensure that farmers can predict the future and be able to tell what is coming. And he intends to do that. Asiwaju has not forgotten women. He's going to empower women with emphasis on social inclusion, economic empowerment, educational parity, and also political empowerment. It's contained in the 80-page manifesto. He recognizes the crucial role infrastructure plays, and we have to commend the present government of President Muhammadu Buhari, the giant effort and strides it has made on infrastructure. A lot of Nigerians are not aware of this, but I know they will realize this after he leaves office. And Asiwaju wants to build on this infrastructural model. If you look at the survey of manufacturers in Nigeria and why they have not been producing optimally, the three major issues they listed are high inflation, poor infrastructure, particularly high cost of power and energy, and high cost of transportation. So infrastructure is actually the bedrock for transforming this economy. If power is put in place 24/7 for majority of Nigerians, you will see small businesses will unleash their energies. Many of them are unable to produce up to capacity, will be able to do so with power available for them at all times. It will take Nigeria on the digital pathway. He wants to exploit the growing digital economy through interventions in the ICT sector. He has a plan to create 1 million jobs in the first 24 months of the new administration. Please take note of that. And he also has a plan to deliver broadband services to 90% of the population by 2025. These are deliverables, and I want members of the public to take note of these deliverables. These are the kind of things that will inspire you, that will make you want to see Asiwaju there tomorrow by May 29, 2023. That the man who is promising us this and is telling us he's going to deliver them, I want him to be the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He recognizes the important role oil and gas plays in our economy. And he also knows that the reason why we are struggling in terms of revenue today is because we are producing suboptimally in the oil and gas sector. He wants to re-energize this sector. He wants to solve all the teething problems the sector is going through now. The reason why the IOC are leaving, why they are selling off their assets and they are not producing up to capacity, the issue of oil theft, and the underperformance of that sector. That's why our oil earnings has fallen considerably. Asiwaju will re-energize this sector and will produce up to capacity. In fact, he's promising to increase production to up to 4 million barrels per day by year 2025. And it's not only limiting it to the oil sector, it's also going further to re-energize the gas sector. Gas is very important to our economy. In fact, it's the bedrock of industrialization. And he has been saying this consistently. The present Ukraine-Russia war has shown us that what we are missing out, if we had built a pipeline from Nigeria across the Sahara Desert, straight to Western Europe, today we'll be swimming in dollars. Because Western Europe is struggling. Russia has cut off their gas supply. And guess what? We have the gas here in Nigeria. All we need to do is to breathe life into the gas sector. And he's promises that he's going to re-energize this particular sector. Now, he says, one of the reasons we have pervasive corruption in Nigeria is because we make life difficult for people. And they have no choice but to look for other ways to survive. A person wants to build a home. He has to look for millions of naira, 50, 60, 70 millions of naira to build a house. He wants to buy a car today. You have to look for a minimum of 10 million naira, which is much more than the annual salary of the average Nigerian. So Asiwaju wants to bring back the consumer loans, be able to encourage lenders to give long-term loans to Nigeria to be able to acquire consumer goods, particularly vehicles, home appliances, and also want to strengthen the mortgage sector so that mortgage agencies, particularly the Federal Mortgage Bank, will be able to source for long-term capital and grant Nigerians mortgage loans for an extended period of time. I look forward to that. And to you, Asiwaju is a progressive leader with a large heart for the underprivileged. He's promising that he's going to continue and expand on the social programs that we have in existence today. Finally, he's an apostle of federalism. He wants to push for constitutional amendment for our national governance architecture so that states have the autonomy and resources to serve their people better. He will support more allocation to states and local governments. Let me quickly, just next 5 minutes, explain to you how he intends to achieve all this, particularly the double-digit GDP growth. First of all, let me explain something. There are 3 prices in every economy. Inflation rate, that is the rate that measures the change in price of a product from one year to the other. Exchange rate, the price of foreign exchange. And interest rate, the price of money and capital. These 3 prices are crucial to the health of every economy. And they are the 3 prices that are troublesome for us in Nigeria today. The reason why we are struggling in manufacturing, in industrialization, is because of the most important part of these prices, the inflation rate. Today, our inflation rate is 20.5%, much higher than even the interest rate. owners of capital will be looking for places to put their money where they can earn more than the inflation rate. Because if you have 1,000 naira, if you had 1,000 naira last year, and inflation rate today is 20.5, it's actually worth 800 naira. And so you're looking for where you put your money so that you can beat the rate of inflation. So for Asiwaju to achieve these goals of double-digit growth and all the economic interventions, he has recognized in the manifesto that inflation must be fought to a standstill. And he's going to use the tool of fiscal policy and monetary policy harmonized in a way that will not stifle growth to fight inflation. How does he intend to achieve this? The easiest way, in fact, before I go to that, let me also explain to you, exchange rate is the second price that is very, very critical to the economy. And is causing us so much injury as a nation. It's making it difficult for our real sector to grow. And the reason being that we have acute shortage of foreign exchange. And our market is not stable. The prices are unpredictable. And there seems to be lack of transparency in the exchange rate sector. So Asiwaju, in the manifesto, has frontally attacked this area. Control the exchange rate market is to bring in more supply of foreign exchange. No amount of tweaking will change the situation unless we have more dollar in the market. And how do we get more dollar in the market? One, we reduce our appetite for dollar. And two, we increase dollar supply in the market. How do we increase dollar supply in the market? We have one way that is obvious. Increase production of crude oil. The second way, increase more exports out of the country and earn more foreign currency. The third way is to divert our attention from imported commodities and bring us back to consume Nigerian-made products and produce as much as possible. The first thing he said, he wants to industrialize Nigeria. Once he's on the pathway to that, we'll then begin to see the ease of tension in the foreign exchange market. So that is his formula for attending to this. And the last part of this aspect of the manifesto is revenue. Revenue is very key. As you can see today in Nigeria, our federally collected revenue is dwindling. And Asiwaju is beaming searchlight in this area. He has done it before. Everybody knows, and you've heard, the way he changed the revenue profile of Lagos. The way, without increasing taxes, is able to use technology to block loopholes, to increase collectible revenue, and is going to apply that same mode at the federal level. He's confident that when he assumes power, revenue will no longer be the problem of Nigeria. And once we have enough revenue, you'll be able to apply them to tackle many of these issues that we're talking about. You know, the drive for industrialization will be a lot easier. So I commend this manifesto to you. I'm very satisfied with the way it has x-rayed the Nigerian economy and the solutions it has put forward. I assure Nigerians, 200 million Nigerians, that the answers to our problem is here. Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu will deliver this economy, and Nigeria will be great for it. Thank you very much.
When you're giving somebody a chance to do something, what has he done with it? And of course, in 1999, distinguished Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu was handed over the state of Lagos. And one can look at how Lagos was in 1999 and how Lagos have been in the last few years. And I think everybody agrees that there has been a fundamental improvement in all ramifications in the affairs of Lagos. And I think that is part of what is propelling this current narrative. For people who may not remember, I can vividly describe a few things which I think most people can relate with. If you take a costly look at Victoria Land as an example. In 1999, the last road next to the Atlantic Ocean, of course, you know, is Ahmadu Bello Way in Lagos. And we had started losing that road to the ocean. As a matter of fact, all the federal government guest houses that were there had become inhabitable. I remember that there was IMB Plaza, which used to be the head office of the then International Merchant Bank, had virtually gone, was becoming inhabitable. And all the choice properties on that road were going because of the incursion of the Atlantic Ocean. And a number of people did not know what to do. I was lucky to be on the entourage, not as a government official, as a private man of the then Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And we went to Cape Town to look at the challenges that was going on in Cape Town at that time. And we came back, put a few things together. And I think looking at some of his goodwill within the framework of the private sector, it was led to now what is now known as the Atlantic City. And with that Atlantic City, the entire Victoria Land have been saved. One would have imagined what would have happened with this era of global warming if that project had not taken place. Probably the entire Victoria Land and a number of places in Ikoyi will have been underwater by now. It is the power of what you can call positive thinking and imaginative work. What we need to do, thank you very much, what we really need to do is not to begin to invent the wheel. Day in, day out, people have come out to provide solutions, and we all know what the problems are, we know what we need to do. But I think the real issue is that in Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, we have somebody who knows what to do and who can do it. And that is really what we are looking at. That is one issue. There are quite a number of others we can look at. At that time, if you remember, the outgoing administration was just trying to democratize private sector, the power sector. At that time, no private individual can dabble into power. It's the exclusive preserve of NEPA at that time. And just as the then military administration was going, they democratized the laws that relate to the power sector. And part of what, as of course you know, Senator Tinubu first did was the so-called Aaron Initiative, which is actually bringing the private sector to come and provide power. The only thing that was not perfected at that time was how that distribution will be handled by the larger power authority. Otherwise, that would have been one of the best solutions to our power situation. And I'm happy that today, that democratization process is now complete and power is now being privatized. What I think we just need to do additionally, and when you look at the model in places like China, you will find that there are distribution companies that are doing micro and mini power stations that are not necessarily going to the national grid. And when you now relate that to what I read in the manifesto, the creation of regional industrial hubs, we now have 6 regions. It is indeed possible to have those industrial hubs created with their independent power without necessarily going to the national grid. And I think, for instance, in terms of power, that is part of the way to go. So, like, what I'm trying to do, therefore, is to begin to look at what you can call low-hanging fruits without a lot of democracy that can begin to improve the situation that we have. Still talking about infrastructure, I must make a few confessions here that when I became governor in 2003, having been part and parcel of the transition committee, it wasn't difficult for me to run Ogun State. All I just had to do was to look at the books that we created when we were working for Lagos, and I was just taking them one by one, and I was implementing. You can call it copycatting, but I must make this solemn confession, and it worked for us perfectly. So that is kudos to a man of vision that we are now believing and hoping that come May 2023 will be the president of the Federal Republic. There are a few things that I've also seen in the manifesto which is quite circumstantial. For instance, let me put it this way, we are to dissect the manifesto. We are not to criticize the manifesto, because criticism is what is private. When we are sitting in a room of 10 or 12 people, if there are things that we want to amend, I know that's a different story, but what we are doing here is to dissect. I think it's very, very important that we understand that. It's therefore to, x-ray in a positive light some of those things that are in that manifesto. And I want to commend one, which is really fantastic. It is creation of what you can call regional powerhouses. 6 regions is what we have in this country. Today, everybody thinks that the only means of survival of Nigeria as a country is the oil industry, which is domiciled in just 1 out of the 6 regions. Not quite so. We have since found out that, as we all know, our country is blessed, greatly blessed with so many, many things. And the reason if not what's going on is Zamfara, for instance, in terms of the gold deposit, or the gold deposit in Elisha, and the bauxite that is in Bauchi, where my former governor superintended, and quite a number of other minerals resources abound that have greater potential than the oil industry. And so what the manifesto seeks to do is to say it is time for us to refocus for the future those other potentials that are in so many other states. I have a feeling that if we really go very strongly into some of the solid minerals that are in certain states, in Kogi State, in Zamfara State, in Katsina State, some of us will probably change our state of origin to those places so that we can be part and parcel of what is going on. So it's an irony, and it is part of what I can call the potentials of this great nation. I'm not one of those people who think that this country is going down. It is a country with 9 lives. You've just been told, for instance, that if we are able to pipe our gas, the gas will be flying away in the last 3, 4, 5 decades through the Sahara Desert through the Mediterranean to Europe. We'll probably be reaping bountiful harvests now from the crisis that we have in Ukraine and Russia. So Nigeria, I'm quite optimistic, is a country with 9 lives, is not about to die, and all we need to do is to find potential people who have capacity to identify those growth areas, and I think in this combination we've gotten it. There isn't a lot we can do with infrastructure without security. And let me make a confession here. Part of what I'm thrilled about this ticket is our incoming Vice President, Senator Shettima. Of course, on a lighter mode, the people of Borno, when I look at Borno State in Lagos, it looks like these people are partly Yorubas. Let me leave that for now. We'll discuss it at another. But when you see the kind of work in terms of security that our incoming Vice President have done in Borno State, I feel quite happy and elated that in that combination, while somebody is looking at infrastructure, somebody is backing up with security, we have a great country that we can look forward to. There are quite a number of other issues, but I think that the model that we should run here is when the panel comes, some questions will come, and from that question we can further develop. I'm particularly happy to see the former managing director of the Ports Authority here. Again, even though I'm not complaining so much because the deep sea port that is being handed over was to have been in Ogun State, but be that as it may, we can't win it all. I'm particularly happy that we have somebody of experience who have seen it also going to sit in this panel. We'll be able to talk about what has happened in the port industry. So what you can call the power of visioning. If you look back into our contemporary experience, you will know what happened in the days of the cement armada. In the last 4 decades, we have not been able to resolve the issue of port congestion. I'm aware that at some point in time there was concession that was done, port was given to, some international agencies, but I think it's clearly a question of supply and demand, that we do not have capacity to process all the goods that are coming into our dear country, leading to this kind of congestion in the port. You cannot imagine, as a businessman, I can tell you, I know this, what we suffer because of the congestion in the port. And we are hoping, again, through the power of visioning of Asiwaju, a new deep sea port has been commissioned. I'm told it's being handed over in the last 1 week. We will now have a congestion in the port, and I'm sure all our traders, businessmen, manufacturers will be quite excited that clearly they can get their raw materials and go and process their inputs for their various factories. It's again what I can call the power of visioning. But I don't want to beg and repeat what everybody knows. Everything about what His Excellency Otumba Femi Pedro has spoken about, inflationary challenges, exchange rate management, interest rate management, is anchored about on only one small thing: supply and demand. I look at the Indian model. By the way, an Indian who is an Hindu have taken over Great Britain a few weeks ago. And I look at the Indian model. Somebody brought statistics out and said in Punjab region, there are 160,000 tractors in one region alone in India. And that same statistic now said, in our great country, despite the arable land that we have are plenty, the number of working tractors in Nigeria is about 8,000 against 160,000, talking about food security, agricultural revolution, and so on and so forth. But what we didn't find out is that those 160 tractors that we're talking about in Punjab region, where were they made? Where were they made? The chances are that virtually all those tractors were made there in India. And the 8,000 we have in Nigeria, where were they made? Definitely none of them is made here in Nigeria. That for me is a fundamental flaw that we have in our economy. People have described it in various ways. In those days, when Fela was singing, some of us used to feel that who is this rascal to tell us how to run the company? He was singing about buying Africa and things like that. And of course, we thought Fela was somebody who, took a little bit of weed and all of that. The fact of the case is that when you look at the situation we have to refer to what he has said. Until we find a way of patronizing ourselves in all ramifications, we're probably not going to go anywhere. And that, for me, is really what we needed to do. We need to shut our doors. The extent I said we can do it by way of, regulation in terms of rates and all of that. But until we find a way of closing our doors and making sure that in all ramifications we can consume what we produce, there is no amount of regulations via interest rate that's going to work. And I think that is the challenge we have as a country. Once again, Your Excellencies, thank you very much for this opportunity to just interface briefly on the infrastructure challenge that we have as a country, and hoping that by the grace of God, going forward from May 2023, some of those things that we all know can now be tackled frontally as a consequence of the combination of the people that we're handing the power to. Thank you very much.
So the mommy says, it is my delight to address you at this important meeting of nation builders and party fellows, where the most topical issue in our land, that is national security, is discussed vis-a-vis the action plans and expectations of APC presidential candidates, our own Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, His Excellency. Firstly, let me note that national security is a precondition for economic and social development. As much as economic and social development is a precondition for national security. No nation can progress in the absence of peace. This is why the Constitution is emphatic that the primary responsibility of government is to secure lives and properties. However, in the web of globalization and the revolution in communication, technology, and commerce, boundaries are becoming indiscernible, and new security-related threats have emerged that tend to defy national boundaries. With boundaries becoming invisible as the world has become a global village, majority of the world's population find themselves in extreme and vulnerable circumstances, with new kinds of wars being waged in every security, all of which demonstrate the fact that states no longer hold the monopoly over security issues. The present government, since inception, has preoccupied itself with addressing the prevailing multifaceted forms of insecurity within all parts of the country, which has adversely affected our growth as a nation, particularly in the Northeast. Religious extremists kill, they destroy properties, they render people homeless, and sometimes ago occupied territories. In the Northwest and North Central regions, communal clashes and activities of armed bandits result in killing, stealing, kidnapping for ransom, destruction of properties, and inability of farmers to farm. The increased drumbeats of armed secession in the Southeast and recently in the Southwest, and the menace of killing all over the country are illustrations of how threats from within the country can affect the well-being of Nigerians. The Brazil destruction pipelines, stealing of nation's crude oil with its attendant proliferation of organized armed groups in South-South region is another big challenge to Nigerians as at today. I must especially add other important challenges to our national security, such as porous national border and transitional crimes, cyber and technology challenges, unemployment and poverty, etc. Furthermore, in the globalized world of today, distant security threats and challenges may reach us with dramatic speed. Preventing and managing them often requires action to be taken far away from our borders. The COVID-19 pandemic, effects of climate change, and flooding are instances of how violent threats constitute great risks to a nation state, requiring greater expansion of how security is perceived. The security of Nigeria is linked to the intricate and often unpredictable processes unfolding in the international security environment. The issue of national security will remain the hottest topic for debate in the 2023 presidential election, and the expectations of Nigerians are even higher now. The current administration was able to reclaim territories hitherto occupied by the insurgents in the Northeast, and thereby pave the way for locals to return to their communities to build their lives once again. The security agencies, especially the military, were more remunerated, equipped, and empowered with modern military hardware to decimate the terrorists who have now gone underground. This has raised the morale of the security agencies. The administration has put in place a lot of social development programs to tackle poverty and reduce the number of those being targeted for recruitment by insurgents and bandits. Government's massive investment in infrastructure and aimed at boosting socio-economic well-being of the nation and further reduce poverty, which is a major cause of insecurity. Also, regional security has been more enhanced with our neighbors to properly tackle insecurity in the nation. The incoming administration would be expected to continue from the gains of the current administration. It is expected that the national security plans of the incoming administration must continue to train and equip our security agencies to do more to secure the country and prevent crime, new ways of financing critical infrastructure like power, rail, road network, etc. All this must be explored to stimulate economic development, and more social development programs must be pursued to reduce poverty, and fresh ideas on combating emerging security challenges of kidnapping, oil theft, armed secessionist group, communal clashes, and flood must be profiled. I have gone through the manifesto of our dear presidential candidate and his counterpart, Senator Kashmir Shettima, and have no doubt in my mind that his experience in governance and passion to make positive impact in our national development, Nigerians will be in safe hands. I will suggest that every idea and strategy for national security must factor in women. This is because the world has accepted the reality that women are agents of peace, growth, and development. Their role in leadership, nation building, conflict resolution, negotiation, and social development is as remarkable as that of their male counterparts.
The paper talked about constitutional reform. Since 1999 to date, there was limited amount of constitutional reform that was achieved. Why was this so? The matter is simple. Our governors, court and in court, not all of them, have not been able to allow the good amendment of the Constitution. And it is a fact since 1999 up till today. So this administration that is coming, a lot of consultation and cooperative must be given a very, very good, indication, so that the presidential candidate, the vice presidential candidate will have to sit down with the incoming governors and get a concession that, look, whatever constitutional amendments we are going to bring, as is passed by the National Assembly, must be given due recognition and passed. The second point, our own attitude. Our attitude is a very, very challenging attitude for the development of this country. I give you an example. We are talking about, how to improve our dollar, our dollars, outside the country. How do we improve that? All of us here, majority of us here, what we wear today is 90% foreign. And we want to improve, the value of our naira. So we have to stand to change our attitude for the betterment of this country. Today, when they talk about changing the value of the naira, many people have started buying the dollars. So we are now dollarizing the Nigerian economy, by abusing or by running away from what this administration is trying to do to bring in more naira into the banking system. Today, the prices of grains, the prices of agricultural products have gone up. Why do they do? People who hoarded money, are there buying and stocking this and this. So our attitude must change. If we do not change our attitude, I'm sorry to say that we'll have a very, very challenging situation ahead of us. The number 3 point. You see, civil service and public service. Our public service and civil service for the 8 years that I've been in the Senate is a very, very challenging one. We have to find a way of changing the orientation of the civil service or the civil servants and the public servants. People, for instance, today, who hold properties, who hold dollars, are the civil servants and the public servants. Many of us, have dollars in stock in our houses. And we say we do not want to, we want to improve the value of the naira in this country. If we do not change this attitude, I'm sorry to say that we will have a very, very challenging, from 2023. But be that as it may, we have professionals, the presidential candidate, the vice presidential candidate, they are experts in their own field. But I'm telling you that we have to sit up, we have to start changing from now, we have to appreciate them, we have to accept the fact that these things, have to be done with change of attitude. The final point I want to talk about is we must imbibe this consultative and cooperative relationship, both horizontally and vertically. Vertically, between the federal, the states, and the local government. If there is no this consultative, discussion, we will have a very, very difficult and challenging relationship between the central, the state, and the local government. Also horizontally, they have been accusing, the senators of being rubber stamps. I've always answered this question. Are we elected to come and fight the executive? We are not. So also we need to have a very good consultative and cooperative, relationship on that horizontal lane. Finally, sir, yes, Chief Pedro, talked about, the prices, interest rate, inflation, exchange rate, wages. I mean, I'm adding, wages. They are very, very important. For this 8 months, we have gone through this country where ASU held us responsible. So wages are very, very important. So we must add that to our manifesto to make sure that we get the right thing.